I'm so excited that you took the time to join us on the next episode of Beyond the Culture. This is the show where we embrace change and challenge cultural norms and ideals. I'm your host, Dr. David Walker. Yeah. So how you doing, Phylanice?
Wonderful. How are you doing today, Doc?
I'm doing well. I am doing well, and I'm just so happy to have you on the show today. And please let me give you your official introduction.
Thank you.
So today on Beyond the Culture, we have Phylanice Nashe Esquire. And of course, yes, that means she is a lawyer, she is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and she hosts an outstanding podcast called Phylanice Nashe Experience. And that's a podcast where she has conversations on entrepreneurship, leadership, and relationships from the African-American perspective. So I am super excited to have on Beyond the Culture today, Phylanice Nashe. Phylanice, welcome to the show.
Woo, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation. It's interesting. I have to let everyone know how we actually connected, which was
sure.
on Clubhouse.
That's
and
right.
I was hosting a room called the Podcast Roll Call. You showed up one day and we had an awesome conversation, you, myself, and the other podcasters that came on. So thank you for appearing in my room and sharing about Beyond the Culture. And now here I am.
Absolutely. And at the end, I want you to give the audience the time that particular podcast or Clubhouse meeting,
Sure.
occurs. So we'll talk all about that at the end.
Sure.
And because it was an outstanding opportunity for people who came on to share about their podcast and what they talk about on their show. And we shared resources and expertise,
Yes.
even down to microphones, right?
Yes,
Microphones.
that was the microphone conversation. Yeah, so we talked about, your microphone, I'm using Yeti, and then my audio engineer, Carlos Jarrett, was on that day and gave us some really great nuggets of wisdom on that, because we had some beginner podcasters on there that
That's
day.
true. Yeah.
And I just want to help people as much as possible because this is an awesome platform.
Yes. So I want to begin our conversation going back into a little bit of your history. As I introduced you, you are a lawyer.
Yes.
And, this show, Beyond the Culture, is always interested in having conversations with primarily African Americans who don't allow limitations and barriers to hold them back, to hinder them. You're willing to challenge cultural norms and ideals and embrace change.
Yes.
That's what this show is all about. And that's the kind of people that we're always having conversations with. So being a lawyer, being an African-American lawyer at that, and a woman.
Yes.
So I'm sure there's stories about that. But what I want to ask you is, was it always your dream to be a lawyer, or is it something that you just happen to fall into?
No. And let me begin by saying I have retired from law and went strictly into entrepreneurship probably about 2014.
Okay.
Moved into our family business, which I'll talk about in a minute. But no, it was not. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Ohio. Went to school to become a psychologist. So my undergraduate degree is in psychology, and started working at a Fortune 500 company that gave me exposure with uh, personal injury.
Okay.
And so from there, I'm like, I can do what these lawyers do. I'm sitting here, I'm representing this organization, not as an attorney, but as a representative with the attorney that we've hired, along with the attorney that's representing the injured party. And I think I can do this. And so that was my introduction into law. My parents wanted me to be a doctor.
Oh.
I just didn't. I wasn't feeling it. Chemistry, biology, all of that. It wasn't resonating with me. And so after I graduated from college and started working at that company, I decided to go in and applied. I took the LSAT, scored well on that, went into law school as an adult. So I'm working, full time and going to law school part time at night. And when I graduated, we were pregnant with our first child. So that kind of put my dreams of, practicing on hold. And it wasn't until we moved here to Nashville in 2007, I took the bar, passed the bar, and started working in a boutique, a all female boutique firm. And from there, opened my own law firm. So that would have been my first introduction into entrepreneurship when I opened my firm.
Hmm.
But I will say I've been married to a serial entrepreneur since we, began dating when I was 19. And so everything that I learned about entrepreneurship, I learned from my husband.
Okay.
And so I can count on one hand how many times he's worked for someone else since we, have been together. So that was my first step out into entrepreneurship on my own,
Okay.
was with my law firm.
Now, and sticking with the conversation about being a lawyer, what would you say was your greatest challenge? Being a lawyer, and what specifically what was the area of expertise that you had?
I was in personal injury.
A personal
So
injury.
my expertise, I spent 13 years working for a major insurer,
Okay.
handling fatality claims and those types of things. That was my introduction into personal injury, and so that's what I carried forward. I was a plaintiff's lawyer, representing injured parties that were involved in automobile accidents, and then I also dabbled in landlord tenant law. The basis or the foundation of the firm that I was a part of was bankruptcy.
Okay.
So I stuck my toe in that, and a little bit of criminal work.
What would you say of all the things that you did was the most challenging, most maybe frustrating? I'm sure
Yeah.
one of them were.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say all of it in general. And this is crazy to say. I went to law school, started my own firm, and I just did not like being an advocate. I
Okay.
really did not. That was something that drove me crazy
Okay.
preparing for, trial. Although I was very successful at all of it, when you think you know what you want to do and that's not what you want to do, you don't have that feeling of purpose within you.
Mm.
And so that was about the time where I ended up closing down. I ended up closing my firm and went into the family business full time. And I had been kind of juggling doing that with my husband, with the family business and practicing law since about 2009. So what gave the best gratification was transitioning from being a lawyer into the family business, which was in correctional education.
Okay.
And so that was our business there was to take educational programming behind the wall to men and women who were incarcerated to help them transition back into society with skills so that they can acquire jobs.
Okay.
So we manufactured tablets, and we also uh, put together learning management systems with software or content so that they can prepare for their GED, so that they can prepare for different skill sets. So when they re-entered into society, that they had the skills to do that. And so we started that company in 2009.
Hmm.
And with my background, in addition to being an attorney, I was also a college professor as well. So that was an easy transition for me. My husband has his doctorate in education, and part of his dissertation was to study why inmates did not participate in educational programming. And from that, we learned that there's inconsistent access to that. So if you're on lockdown, you can't get to your classroom to then get your education. So we said, hey, why don't we put it on a portable, device that you can access at any time? And so that's when we began working with manufacturers in China to come up with a clear tablet that can then be used behind the wall. And then we loaded it with educational programming. And we did that until 2017 when we sold that company. And from there, I moved into philanthropy.
Okay.
And so my kind of mission, since I retired from law and I retired from being a technologist, a correctional education technologist, last year I retired in 2020, was to then start moving into more philanthropy, right?
Hmm.
And so the philanthropic efforts that my husband and my family and I have begun is really trying to work with Black entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And one thing that we consistently heard was there's no funding. I can't get funding from a bank, this, that, or the other. And so what we did was we started a couple of donor advised funds at the Community Foundation here in Middle Tennessee. And one of those deals with Black entrepreneurship or Black business funding.
Okay.
And so those funds, or that one particular fund, is we have their loans, and we've so far been able to grant or uh, loan three businesses here in Nashville. I think it was up for like between $20,000 and $30,000 to give their business that boost that they needed. So they're already existing businesses. They are either in the build out phase, or they're in some type of phase where they need some additional funding. They're generating income,
Hmm.
but maybe their debt to income ratio is off. And so what they do is they go to the community foundation, they apply. Our money is then underwritten by a local bank that also has a Black co-founder here in Nashville called Studio Bank.
Okay.
They do the underwriting, they do the application process. It's just like you normally do, when you have a loan, and then they are provided the funds. But this is the part that I love.
Hmm.
It's the cyclical part. So when you pay that money back, that money goes to our church. There is a church fund, and the church will then manage those funds moving forward to then bless other people who have entrepreneurship goals and businesses with maybe smaller micro loans of that type of sort. But that philanthropic aspect has been very fulfilling. And that's where I've kind of moved from lawyering, being a lawyer, to entrepreneurship, to now being able to bless people with the dream of continuing entrepreneurship.
You used the word fulfilling, and my next question was going to be, we hear of Caucasian organizations and institutions being able to be a funding source uh, for all kinds of people. But was going to ask you, how does it make you feel as an African American family to be
Mhm.
able to be in a position to help African Americans entrepreneurs launch out in business and get the funding that they need so that way they can be successful in business?
Well, I'll kind of give a little bit of history about that, because when you first start out in business and in entrepreneurship, you experience firsthand those trials and tribulations of whatever stage it is, whether you're at a startup, whether you're at growth, and even when you are ready to sell, there are different experiences that you go through. And so, being that we've experienced that multiple times because we own multiple businesses and continue to do that, it just comes with a different set of problems.
Okay.
And we've also learned that there are a lot of organizations, and most cities have like a hub, like an entrepreneur center, where you can go and be mentored and help with your startup. But what we do find is that there's a lot of it's lacking um Black representation. It's also lacking in seeking Black organizations to then incubate. And so, because we've been blessed, uh, it, God has blessed us with many blessings. You have to then in turn around and give that. You have to give that to
Hmm.
someone else. And so that's where the fulfillment part comes from. And because there weren't programs like that for us specifically when we came around, we know that we have to be able to do that for the next generation. And so we looked at what would be the most impactful
Mm,
way to do that, and listening to the folks that we do mentor, who are coming up behind us, and the same thing happens, the same comment: funding, you
sure,
know
sure.
and so our funding mechanism is for, once you've been in the business arena, you have an actual business, you are making a profit, but now you need another set of funding to get you to the next step. um, that's where, this fund seems to be coming in, because these organizations and businesses that we that have been helped by these loans were in that particular stage. They're in the growth stage.
You know, it's just phenomenal just to hear that part of the your life and your journey. Even though you've had many transitions, they
Right.
all seem to be a service, the service of others. And I think that, and you said that, once God blesses you, you got to give back. You got to give back. That's the fundamental principle of faith. Being
Mhm.
a servant, unto others. Um, you also serve, and I want to get to your podcast
Yes.
because that's one of the things we do. One person come on one show, you go on their show and kind of talk about the podcast. And
Right.
so you have an outstanding podcast that I've listened to on several occasions. And I want to start with the question of why you use the term, and we'll talk about the podcast later, but
Yeah.
you decided to name it the Phylanice Nashe Experience.
Okay.
And I know there has to be some kind of a cause or reason other than just putting your name on it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Anybody could, but so the Phylanice Nashe Experience, just talk about why you chose to use that as your title of your podcast.
So when I was coming up with the title,
Mm,
right? Entrepreneurship, I really wasn't sure where the focus was going to be. I definitely knew that I wanted to talk about the three tenets that myself and my family focus on, which is entrepreneurship, education, and criminal justice reform. I knew that those three things were going to be highlighted topics, but I did not know where this journey was going to take me. So I wanted to leave the title open in case there was a pivot to a different topic that I did not take into consideration.
right.
And so after kind of researching a little bit and saying, okay, it's not about me, it's about the experience of what you're going to hear or see during this episode.
Hmm.
That's how I came up with the Phylanice Nashe Experience. My name is unique. It,
Yes.
so if you're talking about Phylanice Nashe, there's only one.
Exactly.
And there's going to be, you will have an experience on the show. In my intro, I say, lighthearted and third eye opening conversations. That third eye opening piece came from our daughter. She's like, Mom, I think you're gonna, the third eye, you get, your third eye is gonna be open when they hear this show. And I'm like, baby, what's the third eye? She's like, your knowledge eye. And I
Mm,
said, I like that. I'm gonna incorporate that into my intro. So the title was to be very broad, but what ended up happening after I went back and looked at season one, I continued to talk about uh, and have entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, share their experience. It's not about the business or the service or the product I want you to talk about your entrepreneurship journey and what it is that you have experienced, because there's someone else out there that's experiencing that as well. Maybe they just need a word or to know that it's a common experience and to keep on moving, and
hmm.
how you navigated that. So it's about storytelling. But the other component, when you say business leadership and relationship, I always want to talk about how you are pursuing this business, but you still have a family at home. What is going on?
Now, before you get to that, because now you're all in my notes here.
It's it's the interviewer in me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. And that's what I wanted to get to. And I wanted to break it down
Yes,
to talk about the two different things that I saw in the introduction and in the title. So again, your conversations are on entrepreneurship, leadership, and relationships from the African American perspective.
that's right.
You started off, which was the first part of my questioning, where people come on and they share their ups and downs
Yes.
in their business experience. So just kind of say that again. Why is that important for them to talk about the ups and downs of business?
Because nothing is ever puppies, love, kisses, and roses.
Mm,
You're gonna go through something, and you're an entrepreneur. You know that there's grit, there's determination. It always seems like something is against you. You're going to have a wall, a
yes.
glass ceiling. There's something that you're going to have to pierce through. And most entrepreneurs have similar experiences. So it's the startup, it's funding, it's inventory, it's I need an office or should I work from home? It's those, small nuances at the beginning. But then it's how do I grow my base? How do
Mm,
I scale this company? How do I, begin to do overseas manufacturing when it's too pricey here in America? So I want my guests to share what they've gone through and what they did to move through those down periods, because when you're a mentor and you talk to people, you can only tell them what you went through. I stray away from trying to tell someone what to do.
right.
I like to tell them, this is what I did in that scenario, and it was very helpful. And, so take that into consideration when you're doing that. So the ups and the downs, everyone's going to go through a up. I want to be there to celebrate with you when you have your moment. But a lot of that grinding is going to be every day. And sometimes you feel like, I don't know, why am I doing this? And I hear from my listeners, I got such a great nugget. I'm going to go ahead and pursue this, or I was feeling stagnant. I've been inspired. I'm going to move forward. So that's the ups and downs, the story of that up and down.
And I'm glad you talked about that because I'm writing a book. I'll mention it since it's my show.
Yes, please do. Because I want to hear about
Sure,
it.
it's called The King Mentality: 7 Guiding Principles to Defeat Giants and Win at Everything Else.
Okay.
And one of the philosophies that I talk about is that in your life experience and anything that you do, you're a winner and you're a champion, but you have to look at life like this. And this is for people who are in business. You use the term ups and downs, and it is true, it is ups and downs. But I like to say that we have wins, and some people say we have losses, but I don't
Mm.
use the word losses. I say
Use
we have
lessons.
wins and learns,
Yep. Yep. That's
wins and
exactly
learns.
right.
And that, and again, some people may consider it a down. And but even whenever it happens and it doesn't always go your way, don't ever look at it as a loss, but look at it as a learning experience
That's right.
that you can gather information from it. And then after you work on it enough, see how you can move the learn into the win column,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's important that we do have conversations about the experience of business, the good things that happen and the not so good things that happen, because that's the only way you're going to learn, get better, and to improve.
That's right.
Now, the second part of the title in terms of how you're ministering to your audience is you say how to avoid causing, and you capitalize this.
Collateral.
So I took notice of that because I think that that's telling me that you think that this is important,
It is.
and I know it is, and it jumped out at me because I feel the same way. The
Mm.
importance of family, but you say how to avoid causing collateral damage to
Yes.
their marriage and family in the process, because you, as well as I know, people get so engrossed into entrepreneurship and winning and getting to the top till they sacrifice the family to levels that
Mm.
are damaging, and is, as you say, a collateral damage to family. So talk about that, because that's very important.
So, collateral damage was a term that my husband came up with when I was hosting a room for a period of time on Clubhouse called "Has Starting a Business Caused Damage in Your Relationship or Caused a Problem in
Hmm.
Your Relationship?" And I'll circle back to what I mentioned earlier, that I have been an entrepreneur's wife many more years than I have been an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so oftentimes I find that when my husband and I are mentoring up and coming entrepreneurs, I find myself sometimes speaking to the supporting spouse and less to the entrepreneur themselves, and what to expect when your spouse is about to take the leap, or you guys have jointly decided that your family, because it's not just the person seeking the business or pursuing that business, it's the entire family.
Mm.
And so, you know, was there a conversation as a husband and a wife, or your significant other, on taking this leap? Because it does impact the time you spend at home, the quality of the time that you have at home. Now we're opening back up to travel. So some people are going to probably pick back up with travel, constantly on the phone, answering emails. Is there going to be a decrease in the income that you bring in if you've taken the full leap and that's all that you're working on? And you have this spouse that's probably picking up the bills, maybe working an extra job, taking care of the kids, making sure the house is running. So that's the part that I mean collateral damage. Is that going to cause such a rift in that relationship that your spouse or your significant other wants to walk away because this wasn't something they signed up for, and
Right.
you're not working on it as a unit to then be able to say, this is what it's going to possibly look like. How do you feel about it? How are we going to divvy up these bills while I'm pursuing this? How are we going to divvy up these household responsibilities? I you know what it, One thing I always love to hear about are love languages, right?
Mm.
What's your love language? Is
Mm.
it quality time? Is it, I like presence? Is it I have to have physical touch? What is it?
Right.
Because a lot of times I could help you navigate
Hmm.
through your spouse being upset with you because you haven't met their needs,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So I have a couple. So this what I started doing at the beginning of season 2 was I started interviewing the spouses of entrepreneurs that I interviewed in season 1.
Mm.
And so I have one set of friends. I interviewed the wife last season. She's a supporting spouse of a serial entrepreneur. And she talked about what from that position, right? She and I both are supporting spouse. So we talked about those tidbits for the supporting spouse. And then I had her husband come on, and his episode was called Happy Wife, Happy Life. And
Hmm.
so talking about from the serial entrepreneur's perspective of how do you keep things balanced at home. And so that is crucial, because while you may be successful in business, your life is shambles at home, and that's not successful. That's not a positive, and I don't want anyone to be in that position.
You know, I don't believe that you can be a successful entrepreneur, and if you have a family, that there is not some sacrifice, uh, or I should say, some sacrificing of
Mm,
family. Some,
mm,
because you
mm,
can't be successful because you're always planning. There's something that's going to come up, family related, that you may have to miss, this or that. Sometimes because you're on the road or what have you. But it's not. I find that it's not maybe the one or two things that a person may miss or not be around for, but it's the continual.
Right.
oversight and not being available on the, on the long term.
Correct.
Because so again, there is always going to be some sacrificing of family. As a mother, I'm sure there's some sacrificing that you have to do, obviously for yourself,
Right.
and then
Exactly.
for a husband and whatever, or family. So it's
Mhm.
always some kind of sacrifice. But I think we have to be mindful and bring balance to the relationship of being an entrepreneur at a high level, because everybody wants to get to the highest of levels.
That's right. That's
And
right.
then how much do you sacrifice your family? And then you have to be very sensitive. You have to listen. You have to,
Mhm.
when people are talking, you have to hear things. And here's something that I say, I'm about to write a book, and my wife and I are going to write it. There's one chapter, we're going to title it Listening, because all the chapters going to have an L to it, like love, like, and then one is going to be listening.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've discovered as a male is that sometimes you have to listen to what she's saying, but also listen to what she's
You're
not
not
saying.
saying. That's good job.
Exactly. Exactly.
That
'Cause
is exactly right. I,
yeah.
I I will tell you, my husband and I have sat down, and if we go back to season one, he and I have episodes 2 and 3,
Hmm.
where it was goal setting and entrepreneurship. But then we have this banter in
Uh-huh.
there between the two of us, and we talk about how we have had to improve in the communication area,
That's right.
because you may think, there's a sender and receiver.
Right.
And if your receiver is still not clear on what you're saying, then the message was not packaged right. Okay.
Correct.
So then now that means, okay, so now the receiver has to say, so let me repeat back what you said, or go to the Rogerian theory and repeat it back. And then you may have to clarify.
That's right.
People are not mind readers, and men and women communicate so differently.
So
I
different.
learned in corporate America, just because I'm a lawyer, I'm trained, I like to give you A, B, C, D, E, all the way through Z.
Hmm.
But that's not how some people, and typically men, do not communicate that way. So I would take a presentation to my husband, it'd be, this long. He's like, just say this.
Exactly.
And then I go into the meeting, and it's like 6 other guys in there, and they're like, Phil, what do you have? And I'm like, I have this, 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 and this. All right, thanks. You got your money. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's like that? But like, I have a budget. Did you hear me say that?
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
So I really had to learn that, one, there's sometimes differences of communication between the gender. Sometimes it's different methods of communication based on culture.
Hmm.
So you have to be open. You
That's
have
right.
to be open. You have to be flexible. You have to be willing when it comes to running a business and having a team. My greatest asset is building a team to address complex issues and leading that team to that goal. And I find a lot of that is uh, making sure that my team is heard, and
Hmm.
making sure that I take care of their needs. And a lot of times it's that communication of, did I hear you correctly? So whether you're talking about the husband wife relationship, whether
Hmm.
you're talking about a coworker relationship, communication is key, and you always have to work on your communication skills. No one person has it right.
That's right.
You have some foundation, but sometimes you can have to tweak it for that one person or this one group. So I totally agree. Totally agree about the communication piece. Can't wait to read your section with your wife. I love that.
um, you mentioned one of your interviews, and
Mhm.
I want to ask, from all the interviews that you had, which interview was the most rewarding and why?
To me, and this sounds so cliche, but they've all been meaningful to me, because while I have a structure and an outline that I typically follow for each interview, I usually hear something from that person that either inspires me or I hear from a listener or a viewer that has inspired them.
Right.
And so they all have meaning to me. I would have to say the most special one was episodes 2 and 3 with my husband, because we got to share from insider knowledge about being a couple in business together.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my most favorite. Now, my most my most entertaining have been with Daryl Freeman, which was Business 101's part 1 and 2. I think those were episodes 11 and 12 from season 1. Daryl is a business icon here in Nashville. He is one of our Black business leaders that, you know, uh, that has the ear of many of the leaders in Nashville, and he gives some like wonderful nuggets of, we just talk general business principles. But then it also turned into things and practices that he has done that has been helpful. So that one was one of my most entertaining, because he's got great energy, great presence on a podcast, and he has a podcast as well. So I would have to say episodes 2 and 3 with Dr. Nash, and episodes, I believe it's 11 and 12, Business 101 and 102 with or parts 1 and 2 with Daryl Freeman, have been some of my most memorable episodes.
Now, I know you have I guess it's a setting for the people you come on your show. I know you're not going to ask anybody to come on your show,
Yeah.
because no podcaster should ask anyone to come on their show. Because you want people to come on that kind of fit, your show,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
fit someone that your audience would love to hear from. But there has to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Of someone, who would be the one person that you would just like, I must have on my show,
Ooh.
that would fit in your context of the Phylanice Nashe show? They may be far reaching from you, but you would say,
Oh, that's a
if I
good.
could just ask that person and they would come on, I would love it. Who is that one person?
Want Oprah Winfrey to come on my show.
Okay.
Oh, you know why?
All
Because
right.
she has interviewed. So I would pick her brain about almost every person that she has interviewed and what it was in that interview that she took away. Because if you impress Oprah
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "Ooh, wow," I would like to ask her about, not necessarily her, because we all pretty much know a lot about her entrepreneurship work, her philanthropic work, but I would like to ask her a lot about the people that she's interviewed. Now, I will get into her businesses, because she's got her own network. She and what is it that what is her ultimate goal with all of the things that she has, right? You've got a network, you've got these master classes, you do these interviews, but what is the one thing that moves you on this earth to do what you do?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to ask her. I would love to ask her that. I think my mom would be totally impressed. She lo- she loves Oprah Winfrey.
Uh-huh.
So I would have to say I would love to sit down and talk with Oprah Winfrey and find out her why, like, and get down to the nitty gritty of why she does what she does, and then what does she want? What is it that she wants to continue once when she leaves this place?
No doubt, having Oprah Winfrey on and having the opportunity to pick her brain. Oh
Yes,
my.
yes.
That would
I would have
that
to
would
have an off-screen conversation and then an on-screen, like, sis, for real. Like, take me back to that scene when you when you stomped through the cornfield talking about you told Hoppo to beat me. Like that, I want to go all the way back to the acting, Oprah, but then I want to know, like, what is it that that drives you. We mentioned before we got on about going to the African American Museum of History and Culture in DC.
Mhm.
And did you get an opportunity to see the Oprah Winfrey wing, and the section about
Yes.
her, and like that is amazing.
Amazing.
You have, and I know you put forth a piece of coin to have that, but like, why those particular artifacts? What is it that you want us to take away from that? Say, like, I just have a lot of small, granular, micro things,
Right.
as opposed to the large, things. I really just want to get in her head, and I really want to know, what impresses you. Are there people that, regular everyday people that impress you? Like, what is it that drives you? And can I be on your show? That's the other thing.
Well, Phylanice, you clearly have the mind of an interviewer, because that's exactly how you're thinking. And you're saying, if I had a chance to get Oprah Winfrey, I want to know how she's thinking,
Yes,
because that's what you do as well.
yes.
Phylanice, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. You have inspired us. You have encouraged us, given us great insight on business, being an entrepreneur, family, being a philanthropist, and helping, serving. I mean, you've done so many great things in your life, and I'm just super excited that you came on the show today. Before I close, I want you to give us all of your social media information.
Absolutely. So you can find me. It's Phylanice Nashe at most social media. That would be on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I also have the podcast is also a YouTube channel as well. So the Phylanice Nashe Experience podcast, as well as the audio portion of the podcast can be picked up on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. I just want to encourage everyone to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also if you are on Clubhouse, I also invite you to join me on most Saturdays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm hosting a room. My current series is Podcast Roll Call, where Dr. Walker and I met. I just want people to come on. If you host a show, whether it is a traditional podcast or you're on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, if you have a show, come on, shout it out, because I want people to know about what's out there and what opportunities there are to listen. And then if you fit the criteria of want to be a guest on my show, if you are African American entrepreneur who wants to share the ups and downs of their entrepreneur journey, the lessons that they've learned, as well as how to balance family life and your relationship, please reach out to me on Instagram. On my bio link, it takes you over to my link tree, and there is a guest interest form there. So go there, fill it out if you want to be on the show. But I highly encourage you to check out the Phylanice Nashe Experience. You will find a nugget of wisdom that will inspire you to pour life into your business and into your family.
Phylanice, again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And as I say to all of my guests who come on the show, you have gone beyond the culture. And I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, you take care.
You too.
Now, if you want to continue to hear inspiring interviews like the one you heard today, I want you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Also, rate the show and please leave a comment. I would also love it if you would share this podcast with your friends to let them know that we're on. Finally, please go to our website at www.beyondtheculturepodcast.com, or you can email me at beyondtheculturepodcast@gmail.com. On the website, you can subscribe to the show and connect with me by leaving your email address. I'd love to hear from you. This is your host, Dr. David Walker, and we'll talk again on Beyond the Culture. Take care.